Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at today's scrap meeting. We're going to begin by reviewing some of the issues we talked about at the previous meeting. We were reviewing the bibliographic input standards page. So I did send you a link to a document in which I used tracking changes to add in our revision. So I hope you were able to review that. I think I forgot to mention that I used tracking changes, so I hope you downloaded it and were able to turn that on. So I'm going to open up that page so that we can review the revisions. And the majority of them were minor revisions, adding in some clarifying points, like correct format is also the type of material, and changing valid audience code to approved target audience code. And then adding in a link to the page. There's some minor points explaining that the genre form heading needed to be added to large print, and that it should be moved from the 650 to the 655 if it's in the 650, or added to the record if not present. John had requested at the last, or suggested at the last meeting, that we remove the requirement to add large print edition to the 250 field. So I did want to review some findings in my research for that. I looked at records in PAC and Vega to see how they displayed. Since we are still using PAC, I think that that is the most important view that we should consider at the moment. The edition statement is visible in the brief view of the records in the PAC, and I think it makes a difference when looking at the records so that it's easier to identify the large print records. And so I feel it's best to just leave the edition statement in the records at this time, and isn't causing a problem if we were to leave it with Vega, although it is much easier to find the large print records in Vega. I think it really enhances the record in the PAC at this point. One change that was suggested via email, Jamie suggested that we change the word foreign for foreign language material throughout the wiki to non-English language material. And I was wondering if anyone had any objections to that. I don't mind going in and making such a small change like that without approval, since it's just changing the word to a synonym. If there are no other comments, I will keep going. So we had already removed the statements on the 945 field. And see if there were any other comments that I added from the previous meeting to review. So one comment that I see on the side for the large print was that a scrap member suggested at the last meeting to remove the first statement. Bibliographic records for large print material should be separate from records that have regular size print. It's something we don't need to necessarily discuss right now, but I was thinking it could be useful to just keep in there, because we've been having problems lately with the large print ISBNs in the regular print records. This has caused problems with accidental overlays. The next thing that I think we will need to talk about in the future is the how the core column appears in the table. But this is something that we'll probably want to discuss in the next fiscal year. I have done some research into it already. And because we have more changes planned, Deborah is interested in holding off on sending the changes to the governing board for approval until we have reviewed the whole document in the next fiscal year and decided on changes that need to be made for updating the table for the RDA toolkit. I sent you a link to the revised table in which I added 2 new columns so that we could do research into the different standards that are available and compare the 2 different standards. So in this additional column labeled core and new toolkit, I have reviewed all of the statements for the LLC PCC core statements in the RDA toolkit and added those into this column. So you are welcome to begin researching this early before the next fiscal year by clicking on the link to the RDA toolkit and reviewing the statements if you'd like to see what they look like. If you click on select policy statement and then press LCPCC core, the statements are added to the right-hand side. And so they have statements that say LCPCC core or at the top, or other statements like that, LCPCC practice. And so there's a lot of notes throughout the side of each page. And in the next new column, core/OCLC standards, I have added in the OCLC standards, mandatory or required if applicable, and so forth. Adrian asked if the PCC statements have been finalized yet. I don't think they've all been finalized, but the majority of all of the major statements have been added into the toolkit. They are planning to begin to use it in July. So I can imagine there could still be some changes made, but I think all of the core statements have been added. So we are going to want to pay attention to any documents that are released starting in July to see if there are any updates and any news or updates on PCC decisions on whether they've pushed back their start date or if they've started to use it, and if Library of Congress has started to use it. But I know that they have said that they wanted to start training people in using it and BibFrame simultaneously in July. So I think that it will be rolled out like one staff member at a time as they begin to train them in separate groups. But this is something we can go back over and talk about in the first meeting of the next fiscal year. So I just wanted to introduce this to you so you can review the document and prepare for the next fiscal year and do any research that you'd like before we bring that up. Are there any questions on what I've covered? Any statements related to the bibliographic input standards page, or any suggestions on how else to revise the bibliographic input standards page? I don't see any other comments coming in, so I will move on to the next topic. The next topic on the agenda was the series title versus main title page. So at the last meeting, there was an interest in clarifying some of the points. So we decided to move that to this meeting. And one suggestion was also to add a note to the end about the meeting notes of when a specific decision was made. I looked through the archive of all of the minutes that I had access to and could not find any reference to a decision being made about series title versus main title. I only found the points in which reminders were mentioned at meetings. So if anyone has an idea of what of when this decision may have been made, please do let me know. It's possible that some of our minutes were not added to our old website and aren't available in my archive at the moment. So please do email me if you have an idea. Has anyone come up with ideas of how this page should be clarified? Adrian suggests more examples. Adrian, are there any suggestions for specific types of examples? Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like. Should it just be examples of the different types of titles or specific types of material?
Rachel, I think you need both kinds of, you need, yeah, both. Adrian
Right.
said so too. I think you need both kinds. And I think the page should be a little less wordy myself. It's kind of just lots of words and more. The examples is a good idea because the page is a lot of words and people sometimes do better without so many words and more examples.
Okay. So Virginia, maybe you and I can review it. We could potentially review it after the meeting and see how we can make it less wordy. Okay, so Lynn says one type example and one title example. Okay. Okay, I don't see any other comments, so we should move on to the next section. So that is the new business. So, there is another comment. Book covers without copyright, for examples. I'm not sure if we can. I'll have to look into the Wiki instructions to see if we can add in images. I think we must have had images in the wiki before. I'll have to look into that. Okay. The next thing on the agenda was a question that came in via help desk ticket. She provided an example of a video game record that had the statement related to PS4 in which it can be upgraded to PS5. Some of the records had an addition statement PS4, PS5, and others did not. And her question was, should PS4, PS5 be included in the addition statement? And if so, should we add this to the wiki? So I forgot to open up Polaris to show you the record. So I was going to bring that up. One moment.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
Does that PS4, PS5, does that mean that the game is compatible with both? Is that what that means?
Yes.
Okay. I like that idea, and I would suggest also doing that for Xbox One and Xbox X, if that's possible, because that can get confusing for our members and our staff, actually.
The issue here is that the Xbox compatibility, those games are actually playable just on their own. The PS4, PS5, that's an upgrade. It's a separate download and requires a disc. And it's also, some of them may be free at this time, may not be free later. Some of them may not even be offered in the future. And some of them are only a one-time thing. So it's only one person can use them. So it's not really like it can be, you can put the PS4 disc into the PS5 and just play. It's you can put the PS4 disc. You have the PS4 disc and it goes in, but it's actually a separate, entirely different download. So I mean, it's not really quite the same thing, and it's not really just an upgrade per se. It's or like the Xbox where it's just playable on both. It's an entirely whole different situation.
In that case, it sounds like it might be more confusing if we added that to the records. I didn't realize that. Thanks, Brad.
So the Xbox situation, it sounds like it doesn't require any extra discs or downloads. It's just completely compatible with both systems, but with the PS4 system, it would require the extra disc and the PS5 console. So have the addition statements been added like this for the Xbox records? So the 753, that just has Xbox One in it, I think. it'd be Xbox Series X. Does anyone remember any titles that could be like this off the top of your head if you've seen it recently?
For one that has both, control number 2529019.
Two 2529019. Okay, Xbox Series X, Xbox One. Is it worth adding something like this to the catalog wiki?
The only thing you have to note is that it's not universal. Not all Xbox One games are playable on the X. Sometimes there's separate versions for both. So it just has to be sure that it actually is playable on both.
Okay, Adrian comments that it is useful. So we already have a similar statement about PlayStation VR. I think we could just revise it to say if it says it's playable on 2 systems or requires 2 systems, that both can be included in the 250.
So this would just apply to the Xbox, not the PS4, PS5 situation, correct?
Yes. So I think we'll have to make a statement saying that as well. Okay. Thank you, Adrian, for the text. We'll definitely explain both situations in the catalog wiki. Do we need to have a formal vote on it, or do you think this is just similar enough to what we said with the PlayStation VR that we could just consider it a text revision? One suggested this can just be a text revision. Okay, I think we'll do that since it's pretty minor. Okay, great. The next thing on the agenda, Tammy was interested in discussing the point that the district's public librarian Emily O'Neill made in the Laconi presentation on using a 9XX field for the offensive terms that are removed. Tammy, did you want to provide a summary of what you're interested in discussing?
Well, I was just interested in hearing other catalogers' opinions on it, just because there's so much controversy these days with books getting banned and people thinking things are being hidden from them. And I definitely like the new terminology where we're going towards, but I also am concerned if patrons who feel like we're deceiving them because they can't search under what they consider the proper term, even though we have decided it's not. So I was wondering how everybody was thinking about that in our group. If we, because this other library was putting those terms that they really didn't want hidden in it so that it could be still be searched, but when the record comes up, those terms aren't there for the public to see, to be offended by. But I also didn't know how it would work with Polaris because we do have that librarian's view that does show the record. Could we still hide it in there, or if Polaris would hide it regardless?
Adrian commented that she'd want to see how it works and what terms are being considered offensive. I think Swan is doing something similar. So I'll have to do some research into that. I think they use a maybe a 690 field or something like that for the terms, and they do hide them, but they're indexed. So I can definitely take a look to see what they look like for the future. And I think these are just terms like the illegal aliens terms that they have replaced with the undocumented immigrant terms. And the problem though with Polaris is that we'd have to look into seeing if the terms can be hidden but indexed, and we do not index the catalog very often. So the next time we would be planning on indexing would be if a new library joins the consortium. And if this happens, it would be if Warren Newport becomes a member in August 2023. So it's something that would not be able to happen soon if we make that decision. But we can take a look at some examples and try searching in Swan's and Dishu's catalog to see if it seems useful. And maybe just document the possibility that it could potentially be useful for the future.
Okay, thank you. I just more or less wanted to start the conversation on the subject.
Sure. It's something we can definitely revisit in the next fiscal year after we do some more research. So the next thing I wanted to discuss are a couple of wiki pages that will be deleted due to not being updated. During the most recent upgrade to the wiki, in which we upgraded the software, we decided that only CCS staff would have access to update the wiki. In previous years, some scrap members were allowed to update it, but most of them have not updated it in a while. So there are a few pages that need to be either updated or deleted. Some of them were ones that I think just were not being used very frequently, and we're just keeping track of like usage of headings. So one moment, I need to find those. I'm going to stop my sharing my screen while I look for that information. But one of them I do want to talk about more is the genre heading page. The genre heading page lists both LCGFT terms and local terms, but it is really out of date and hasn't been updated with any new LCGFT terms in a long time. And so since scrap members have not been updating it. It was suggested that we delete all of the LCGFT terms and only include the local genre headings on this page. And LCGFT terms can be found in authority records or on other websites like id.loc.gov. So this doesn't have to be the source that people use, although I have heard some feedback that a lot of people really like going to this page to search for genre headings. So I did want to bring this up because I know some people really like this page, and was wondering if anyone objects to the idea of removing the LCGFT terms from this page and making it local only. So Adrienne has commented that she's fine with using the page for local terms. John does like using the local term, I mean, the LCGFT terms on the page. And Tammy does not want to remove them either.
Actually, I have a clarifying question.
Sure.
At my last library, we had something similar where we had a list of LCGFT terms, but we only could use LCGFT terms that were on that page. So is this the same thing, or are these, is this, I guess I'm confused about why this would be on the wiki if we're not being limited to just those terms.
This is not the same thing. It's not limiting. It was really just a list of all of the LCGFT terms in hierarchical order. So I'm not sure when it was last updated. It would be hard to say because we added the local headings later. I'm not sure if there's an easy way to update this by just copying a hierarchical list from ClassWeb page by page, or how it could be updated. I'm not sure how it was updated in the past. But we do have the local headings down at the bottom of the page, but some of them have been added into the hierarchy of LCG terms. Like here it has video recordings, and underneath it, electronic videos, local. Virginia, do you have any memories of how this was updated, or how we could potentially update it to stay on top of it if there had been any changes since the previous update?
I think John from Displays actually is the one who added it, so you might want to ask him. There's really, I think it would be difficult to keep up with it because it changes every month.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to suggest even to leave the terms that it is and say this is not this is like, keep it as a static list. I mean, say this has not been updated recently, but you could keep it still on the wiki and
Okay.
say go to, and cite the sources to where to go to find the new one. That
Okay.
might be kind of a kind of in the middle of the road thing.
Since it hasn't been updated in a while, I'm just curious if anybody knows, is there a chance that there are terms on this page that are no longer valid, or isn't that not a concern?
They don't delete a lot of genres. It seems like they just more or less just add them. Sometimes they do change the name a little bit, but not usually very much anymore.
I like the way Virginia is thinking on this, but I would also like to say, I know at the very top of the document, it does stress about how the formatting for the local genre should be, the 655 is 7, the hashtag 2local. However, I constantly find records where the local headings aren't formatted that way. Is there any way we could make that more prevalent, or send out a reminder to everybody, or bring it up at a CAMS meeting or something?
I think that's because there are some exceptions to how they had been done in the past, and that there's some notes about it in the authority records, or that you can see that it's been done differently in the authority records. So we could maybe add that to the page to check the authority records to verify how it should be coded.
Okay, thank you.
But it wouldn't be
Okay,
bad.
so
I was just gonna say it wouldn't be a bad idea to be also do a reminder at a CAM. I could even do a reminder at the CAM meeting.
yeah. Okay, so we can go ahead and keep this one. I will add a clarifying note to check the authority records to verify how it should be recorded, and to add in updated links to sources. So John asked a question about going back over the point we made with PS4 and PS5 in the 250 and the 753 for the upgrade games. So for the PS4 and PS5 upgrade, there is a separate disc that is required to upgrade it to the PS5. So for that, the records do not need to have PS4, PS5 in the addition statement, but because that extra disc is required. But for the cases of Xbox One and Xbox X, the disc is compatible with 2 different systems. So that is when you would leave the Xbox One, Xbox X in the 250. So I will be revising that statement in the wiki page and sending out an email about the revision as soon as that's been completed. Yes, the upgrade is an electronic file on a separate disk. So there were some other pages I did want to bring up that John has suggested that we delete. He had been maintaining them, but since only CCS staff are going to be able to edit the wiki, he won't be able to maintain them. So he had created this list of AC headings. I'm not quite sure exactly what this list was, but I'm not sure if anyone else has used this except for John. Adrian asked, what is AC? John?
AC.
This was part of the subject genre task force. You can delete this page. AC is the kids headings, and
Kids
it's
heading.
not. It's CYAC now anyway, but you can delete this.
Okay. And John had also kept track of local genre usage. So this is another one that can be deleted. And I wasn't quite sure what this page was, the Sandbox 3 page, but that's another one that he has recommended deleting. And for the macro page, what I'd like to do is to revise it so that we have a separate page for the local practice macro. CCS is interested in leaving John's macro page up because we know that some people do find it useful and we don't want to remove it. But I will try to revise it so we can emphasize that there's a separate page for the local practice macro. Are there any other comments on the topic of removing these pages or suggestions? I think I am frozen. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
you. Rachel.
Okay. Sorry, my screen is not quite working for Zoom controls right now, but if you're hearing me, I don't need to change screens right now. So hopefully it's still recording properly. Oh, there it goes. If there are no other comments on that, I'll move on to the last item on the agenda. So plans for our next fiscal year. So CCS has decided that we are going to continue to have virtual meetings for the advisory groups for the next fiscal year. It has worked very well for us for the last 2 years to have the virtual meetings so more people can attend and participate, and we can easily share everything via our screens. The next thing I also wanted to do was to just take a brief look at the roster and who would be coming back next year to confirm who would like to come back for an additional year. Looks like Victoria is still did not come today, and she was here, so I will have to email her. And next person on the list that has been here for just 1 year so far is Adrian. Adrian, are you willing to come back next year?
Yes.
And Linda, are you willing to come back next year for a second year? And she has said yes, great. Okay, so every year when we do recruit new members, we have problems with recruiting enough members for their first year, and I would like to see if there are any alternatives to bringing back some of the second years for a third year. So Lynn has been on the, or Lynn Crembier has been here for 3 years. So we have 3 other members that have been here for 2 years. And so I was wondering if any of you would be potentially willing to come back for a third year if we do not have enough new members. So Lynn Rubio, would you be willing to potentially come back for a third year? Okay. Tammy, if we need you to come back for a third year, would you be willing to do that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. John, would you be interested in coming back for a third year if we need any additional people?
No.
No? Okay, great. So I think we should have enough with all of those options. Great. So we do not have as many items prepared to discuss next year or plan to discuss next year on our list, but because we have created a DEI and metadata networking group for all of Illinois, I hope that some new topics could potentially come out of that Scrap could discuss. So I am looking forward to hearing of any additional items from that networking group. And they are planning on having working groups in order to create recommendation statements for best practices that could have different variations of different best practices that libraries could choose from. So it's something that we'll be able to look forward to reviewing hopefully in the next fiscal year. Although the ones I'll finish first are probably issues that we've already tackled, like the undocumented immigrant headings. The other major issue that we'll be discussing is anything related to the new RDA toolkit and updating that the table. So if you have any ideas of issues that you would like to bring up during the next fiscal year, feel free to let me know and email me. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone before we go for participating this year. We always get a lot of work done in these scrap meetings, and it's been a great year. And I really do look forward to working with those who come back next year. So I hope everyone has a great spring and summer.
Are we adjourning?
Yes. we are
Virginia?
adjourning.
Virginia, can you hang out for a second?
I will stop the recording.